Ladies and gentlemen, shows of the interwebs out there, Sebastian Envy, Small Style, Cinephile, X-Men 97. Tolerance is Extinction, Part 2. Let's geek about it for a scan. Few minutes. I know the first one hasn't dropped yet. I've redone it like 3 times, and I'm not hitting the vibe that I want to as far as my assessment of it. So I'm still kind of trying to fix that. So it's still coming. It's very much like the Life Death Part 2. Still got to talk about that, although I could do that pretty quickly as far as my thoughts on that episode. So those two are still coming. Not going to leave them by the wayside, but let's get into part 2 because shit has hit the fan in part 2. Now, in part 1, I kind of thought that Professor Xavier arriving back to Earth was going to create some friction. It wasn't going to be the happy sort of reunion that you might have thought it would be. Because, number one, Bastion is using Xavier's, the fact he's still alive, and consorting with aliens to enrage the public, cooking up a story that they faked his death to create sympathy for the mutant cause, which led to things like Genosha and better relations between humans and mutants since then. So we knew that was going to cause some issues because, again, it's like you're up there doing your thing. We're down here trying to move on from you, dealing with all this crap, the war between, humans and mutants that goes on. We're dealing with that. You're up there with your alien booty call. We have Scott dealing with the fact, his anger, and rightfully so, that Charles left the X-Men in the hands of Magneto, their greatest enemy, on just the whim, the hope and the prayer that there's just some good inside of Magneto that would prevail. And he would toe the line of being the good guy. And it's just, that's one of the fundamental things that divides Magneto and Xavier, and it comes to bear in this episode. Is the fact that Xavier just has his dream and his positive outlook and his thoughts that they can rise above and they can be more. People can coexist. We find out in the first episode that yeah, they coexisted. A peaceful future came about, but it was built upon the backs of mutants that were still left alive, that weren't killed off. And Magneto is just of the mindset that if you, I mean, how much are you gonna, you turn the other cheek, you get slapped in the face on the other one. They're just gonna keep on beating us down if we let them. We have to do something. We have to act. We have to declare war, which is what he does with his big EMP strike in the previous episode, because that took some, like, it was an EMP strike. It took out generators and other electronic things. I mean, who knows? I mean, you got hospitals blacking out. I mean, did it take out airplanes? Did you have planes like falling out of the sky? Like thousands of people have died. Humans and mutants have died in the wake of this. And Xavier's trying to tell him, hey, that's like you're not benefiting us. You're just hurting us, trying to hurt them. But it's Magneto. He will not be moved. He is going to carry out his plan, his vision, his dream. And to do that, he recruits, or I mean, he makes his pitch at the X-Men to say how many more of you or us are going to have to die in service of his dream. With me, things will be different. And 2 people take him up on that. And that is Rogue, and that is Roberto. Roberto's like, my mom just handed me off to the Prime Sentinels, like just like I was nothing. Like she severed her ties with me. Uh, what is it? What does walking Xavier's path do for me? So he's like, I'm out. Rogue is mad because Remy died, other mutants died. I mean, is she really mad that Remy died and that's why she's going with Magneto? Or is she still want some like magnetic dick from Magneto? I don't wonder. I know I wondered that. But you see them squaring off against the X-Men when they come for Magneto later on in the episode. Um, the battle in this episode, because we get some good character stuff, of course, as we always do. We get some good action. The action is the X-Men split into 2 teams, blue and gold, to confront Bastion and try to kill his control on the Prime Sentinels. There may be a way to turn them back to normal. So we see Trish Tilby like in the bed. Beast is kind of is holding vigil over her. We know she turned out to be a Prime Sentinel, tried to kill him last episode. But there might be a way for them to be healed and maybe not totally back to normal, but at least not zombie, sentinels. So they're going to try to do that, get him under control to do that, and then the other team is going to be going against Magneto to stop him, to convince him to reverse his damage that he's done to the Earth, because the Earth is fucked basically. There's a 12-hour time countdown clock that's thrown out there, so they got to act fast, and they do. And the battle is on, and it's great action, of course. You see at one point Jean Grey confronting, battling with Mister Sinister. That's an interesting battle as he physically tries to get at her, and he also mentally, emotionally tries to taunt her about Madeline and being the clone. He's like, "Hey, if you're nice to me, I'll tell you when I swapped you out," that sort of thing. And I like what this show is doing with Jean as far as like her being in the battle. And we saw in the episode with uh, Trask when he was revealed to be a prime sentinel. Uh, there's a couple instances where she's like floating and like she's flying, he's flying, and they're kind of, they do the whole like anime sort of thing where you have like lights, like, which is representing people kind of like flying around, they're clashing against each other and all that type of stuff. They're doing more with her in battle. She's not just like trying to hold up a rock or a car or something and just grimacing and making like funny sounds while she's doing it. She's really involved in the battle. She's getting a lot more physical in these battles, and I like that. I like seeing that. We see Sinister apparently has some control over Nathan. I'm sure it's due to the technovirus. We see Cable battling Jean. It's like telepath on telepath. I don't think that often we think about the fact that Cable is like a telepath himself. Uh, we just think of Cable, guns, shooting stuff, but he is a very strong telepath. And they go at it telepathically. At one point in time, it seems like Jean is being worn down by Cable, and then she calls out to Scott. Does that ultimately take her out? We don't know. It could. The show, as we've seen, the show is not afraid to take some chances and kill some X Men, which is awesome. But I don't think it does. We see Xavier in this episode pushed to make a hard call on Magneto. First, he's like trying to convince him, to cajole him, to reason with him, to undo the damage that he's done to the planet. And he's like, F it, get his helmet off. I'm going to take control of him and reverse it myself. So this represents kind of like, and I can't remember if it was somebody just on a message board that was theorizing this, or if it was like an article on CBR or Screen Rant or something like that, where they were kind of speculating if Xavier, to stop Magneto, was going to have to finally compromise his sort of some of himself and some of his beliefs and some of the goodness or the soul that he tries to hold on to in this eternal struggle against Magneto and for the peaceful coexistence between humans and mutants. If he was going to finally have to kind of dip a little bit over to the dark side to kind of get things done, you kind of see that with this, order to the X Men to like remove his helmet. I'm gonna like get in there and do it myself. You kind of see a little bit of that, and you gotta kind of wonder with Xavier kind of slipping over into that, are we kind of walking that line that's going to take us towards Onslaught eventually? Because the Onslaught was kind of an amalgamation of like sort of the darkest sides of Magneto and Xavier's mental space. I mean, there's way more than that to him. But like in a like nuttiest of nutshells, that's kind of what he was. So are we gonna go towards that? Because we've seen in this show they've given us like the mutant massacre. They've given us some fatal attractions. They've given us just some storylines from the comics and just put the spirit of them in the show. They gave us Life Death. So they've done some storylines from the comics and adapted them to the framework of the show, of the world that they've built within X-Men 97. So are they going to do the same thing with Onslaught? And are we going to get an Onslaught in some kind of way? Remains to be seen how it all plays out. And speaking of the Fatal Attractions ending, we see in this battle with Magneto, Wolverine, like, he's the guy that does the dirty work. He stabs the shit out of Magneto. And we see Magneto turn and then attempt to rip the adamantium out of Wolverine, which is part of Fatal Attractions. So again, they're not adapting 100% some of these storylines that you see from the comics, just pulling out some of the main sort of bits and pieces and emotional triggers from these stories and putting them in a show like Fatal Attractions. That just crazy, like jaw-dropping moment where he pulls the adamantium out of Wolverine in the comics. He's doing it in the show. So I love that this show is just it's taking us there. It's taking some chances, it's taking some risks, it's taking some bold steps in its narrative, and it's just executing it damn near like flawlessly. I mean, outside of like a few narrative missteps with this show, I mean, it's been largely freaking perfect. Like, this is the best like thing that they've done in a very, very, very long time. Got another cameo courtesy of Moore, the Incredible Hulk, showed up in here. And like I said, I really would like a true Juggernaut appearance in one of these seasons, but I guess the ones that we can't get on the show are going to be given to us in cameo form by Moore. It is what it is. But ultimately, it was another crazy episode. I'm a little tired today because I stayed up till 2 to watch it drop. Um, but it was another good episode. It was another episode that raised the stakes, considering the deaths from the mutant the Genoshan massacre, from Magneto's first wartime salvo to however many other mutants um, have been victims of violence and stuff since then. Because we saw Jubilee and Roberto get rescued by Storm when they were getting chased, Storm and Forge, when they were getting chased by a mob. So you got to kind of think there that's happening in other parts of the country since Magneto's attack. So it's like Xavier said, like, bro, like, you're messing that up for all of us. Just you're pissed off at the humans, and it's like you're becoming them. It's just not helping. But I mean, Magneto's gonna do what Magneto's gonna do. So as some people theorized, it was like two front war in this episode: one against Bastion, one against Magneto. Is that going to continue in the next episode? Or Sunspot and Rogue, now that they've witnessed like the lengths that Magneto will go, the violence that he's willing to inflict, are they going to stay with him? Remains to be seen if that happens. And of course, you have Bastion, who's basically, man fused with machine, power extreme like Centurion. um, what's going to happen with him as far as Cable and the rest of the X-Men? Are they going to be the ones to stop him? Is it going to take a... Because at this point, it's like nothing's going to make Magneto see the error of his ways, is it? I mean, he's far gone at this point. So I don't think it's going to be... I don't think he's going to play a part in stopping Bastion. I think it's going to be... They're going to neutralize him some kind of way, with possibly Sunspot and Rogue defecting back to the X-Men side after seeing what he does to Wolverine, and then they team up and then go, fuck up Bastion. But with this show, who knows? Who knows? Who knows if anybody else is going to be taken off the board? You just never know with the show, and that's what makes it so great. They're taking chances with storylines. They're taking chances with the characters. They're pushing the characters emotionally, physically, and it's just great. They are really rocking it, killing it with this show again and again and again. And I'm here for it. We got one more episode to go, and remains to be seen how it all plays out. I mean, we know that there's going to be a season 2, so it's like, we're going to get a nice tidy ending, or did they know enough in advance to plan a cliffhanger, like another jaw-dropping cliffhanger to leave us on? I can see them doing that, but we got a week till we find out. But anyway, those are my thoughts on it, scattered as they often are. What do you guys out there think? Let me know in the comments below. Follow me on social media. Like I said, we have one more episode to go, and then a buddy of mine and I are gonna hop on here, and also we'll kind of release it as a podcast, because I'm debating how to get into the podcast space, or if I want to, because it's all saturated. Even this is all saturated. But we're going to do a debrief on the first season of the X-Men. So I'm really looking forward to that, and chopping it up with somebody else and getting somebody else's perspective other than myself and my little echo chamber here as far as the X-Men. And until next time, let us geek.